Oh.
Oh my God! One so showing me shaking my head and my negative attitude feel after that Buffalo game where they don't. All I can tell you is Dolphins number one, baby!
Next up, baby.
Dolphins number one!
Where if a certain quarterback is mentioned in the comments, got my beers ready. I'm gonna crack it open.
Or is it the Serbian kid?
Serbian kid!
This looks done. Oh my God, it looks fantastic.
No, good beat, man. Not a beat, man. Woo! I'm the man. I said it, and it's reality. All right.
Congratulations.
Welcome into the Once Upon a Sunday Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Josh Kimmel. With me, we have a special guest, Cody Woodman. He is from Off the Schneid. You can follow him on Twitter at Off the Schneid. How are we doing today, Cody?
I am doing fantastic. I managed to pick the winner at the RBC Heritage, Matt Fitzpatrick, so that helped out. Got a win there. It's always nice on a Sunday. Other than that, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Pretty good, man. Like, I can't complain. Had a great pool day down here in Tampa, Florida. It's been very, very hot. I got this problem where I don't know if you know, but I have this massive burn on my chest and my stomach. It's out there in the world if you want to go see my chiseled abs and chiseled chest. But I was able to go to the pool, and I put all this SPF 110 my dermatologist told me to get. I couldn't get the back. So you see a perfect like fingerprints of where I didn't get in my back. It's the worst, but it is what it is.
Yeah, that's a nice problem. I'm up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. So it actually was plus 15 today, which is Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit for you guys. Decent day, nice day. The snow's almost melted, so a little bit different problems for me up here. But
yeah,
I'll take that.
Never seen snow. I don't think snow will ever come to Florida as long as I live. I know it was here once before, but thank you all for coming in. We are presented by the Fins Talk Sports Network. Of course, you can follow them at Fins Talk Sports Network. If you're here, please like this show and subscribe. We're at 821. We took 2 weeks off. We were at 813 when I left. I told you all I want 1,000 by the draft. That's 2 weeks. Don't tell me the odds. We're going to do it. All right. I've been preaching this for a couple months now. We were off for WrestleMania and Easter. I think Easter was okay, but WrestleMania, that was a little stretch, but I enjoyed myself. Do you watch a little wrestling, Cody?
I used to, but not since I was, I don't know, a late teenager. I did watch it for a good long while there, but after kind of the Attitude Era, it kind of dissipated. It got a little Mickey Mouse for a bit there, and I don't know, it just wasn't as good. And then there was not a lot of talent. There was a bit of a gap there. I'm sure you know. There's a big time gap after, The Rock and guys like that. And I mean, Triple H was still there, but I used to, but there was just a huge gap there. And then it kind of just lost me. So that was the end of my wrestling days, to be honest.
Yeah, WrestleMania took over our Fins Talk Sports Network group chat on Twitter. Like, it was nothing but WrestleMania. And like, all the older Dolphins fans were like, guys, shut up. Like, can we talk about Tua's concussion again? I'm like, guys, chill on Tua. We're done with Tua right now. But we are going to be talking about some ADP showdowns. I looked up on Underdog today, which you told me you're a best ball fanatic, maniac, psychopath, if I may say. 500 drafts.
It's a disorder. Yeah,
it really is
a problem.
I use best ball as a mock draft system. I probably shouldn't because it's a totally different game, totally different. But I cannot stand doing mock drafts versus a computer or with other people because the situation, you don't know what they're drafting for. So I like to use, at least I'm using real money to do these mock drafts.
Yeah, I 1,000,000% agree. I don't do mock drafts at all anymore unless I'm invited on a show like this or something, or whatever it is. But even just looking at the ADP, you don't even have to do drafts. You can just create an account and look at the ADPs, look at the rankings, wide receiver 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, which we're going to go through here today. But yeah, it's real money drafts. So there's consequences. It's not just guys throwing around, I'm going to take Lamar Jackson in the first round, whatever. It's just not going to happen there. Not usually, mind you. This still does sometimes, but it's not typically going to happen. So you're going to get more true grades. It's not really useful for a dynasty setting, but for redraft, I think it's second to none in my opinion as far as looking at ADPs and rankings.
No, I totally agree. The only thing different about this, best ball, it's a longer draft, I feel like, over a redraft. And I'm holding 3 quarterbacks at least, unless it's like Josh Allen and some other guy I can trust. I'm holding 3 tight ends, which I never do in redraft as well. I only hold 1, of course. And I try to get that 6 running back, 6 receiver split. I don't know how you handle that. I mean, that wasn't on a rundown, but I'm kind of curious now since you do so many best balls. Like, what is your perfect loadout or roadmap to a best ball team?
Similar, especially early season, these big board drafts, they're 20 rounds. So you obviously get 20 draft slots, 20 roster slots. So I'm going with 3 quarterbacks, like you said, unless I'm getting Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, or Patrick Mahomes, maybe Joe Burrow. But other than that, I'm taking 3 quarterbacks, and same thing, like you said, with tight end, unless I'm getting Kelsey. I'm more thinking maybe a guy like Hawkinson, not particularly huge on Mark Andrews right this second, but if I have Kelsey, I'm not taking more than 2 tight ends. So similar to you. And then, yeah, depending on how it works out with running backs, wide receivers, I might, take 1 extra running back, 1 extra wide receiver, but I'm the same as you. I try to even those out. And that's the massive majority of I had 98 big board drafts, which is really kind of frustrating of a number. So I would say the massive majority are that structure, unless it's like you said, those quarterbacks and that 1 tight end right now. So yeah.
I feel like I'm a person like me, a casual best baller who does maybe about 30 to 40 in the off season. I look at my analytics, I look at my exposures, and I'm like, okay, who's the guy I'm going to brag about this year that I drafted this many shares of? Do you get caught up in that when you're like, I'm 98 drafts in, I get this guy 42% of the time, I might as well grab him again just to.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And to be honest, that's kind of what you have to do. Take a stand, get your guys. I'm a firm believer in, taking a stand, planting your flag, be ready to die on the hill. And it is what it is. We'll get into it. Once we get into it, you'll see what I'm talking about, because I absolutely am a bit of I habitually do that to myself, for better or for worse. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But again, with these early best ball drafts, you can get 3 quarterbacks. You can get 3 tight ends. So you can take a stand on guys that are, ranked pretty low or go pretty late in the draft, and you're not really hurting yourself. Worst case scenario, they don't play as well, but you get a couple spike weeks out of them, and then your other 2 guys are kind of carrying you. So yeah, I'm a firm believer in get your guys, take a stand. And there is a point where, you might have a little too much exposure, but like I said, we'll get into it in a second here. I've got a quarterback that I'm heavily exposed to in my 98 best ball drafts. So yeah,
I do have a question to add on to that. Players that may have burnt you in the past. I know a lot of people, everyone has like that player, this player, that. For me, a long time, it was Robbie Anderson in my championship game in my home league. The year he decided to be good, like for the first time ever, I'm like, okay, I'm throwing him in. Championship game, I threw him in, of course, right, riding his thunder. He put up a 0 spot. I lost by literally 1 point. I could have put any other player in my lineup. I had Sammy Watkins in the day before, and I said, you know what? I'm going to go with Robbie Anderson. Ever since then, I've been trolled by my league mates with Robbie Anderson my entire career, for like almost 10 years now. I don't know how long it's been, but it's been a long time. Who's that one?
You should have taken the floor. You should have taken the floor with Sammy.
I know I should have, but at that time, I was a weaker team, so I was shooting for the moon. Yeah, I knew I had to take a shot. I knew Sammy Watkins was not that guy anymore. Sammy Watkins, man, I have history with that guy too. But I knew Robbie Anderson. I needed that big game from him, and it didn't turn out.
No,
Gosh,
fair
that
enough.
was the
It
hardest.
happens. The one guy that I could think of when we are talking about this, or when I got the show sheet there, was a couple years ago. It was either 2016 or 2017. It was Michael Crabtree. It was in week. Obviously, there was only 16 games back then, so it was week 15, the week before the fantasy finals, the championship, and there was a play. It was wide open in the end zone. And it just kind of dribbled through his hands and he dropped it. If he catches that ball, not only do I think the Raiders would have won that game, I would have won my semifinal matchup, would have went to the finals, would have won a championship that year if he had caught that ball. So that one really hurt me. I really, really had a hard time with Michael Crabtree after that. Mind you, he was on the downslide anyways, but and then more recently in the league that you and I are in, I took a pretty hard stand on Trey Lance and Javonte Williams. You can't really plan for these things. Obviously, they both went down pretty early with season-ending injuries, burned me in 2 leagues. I like to do that sometimes where if I have a dynasty league that I have certain players and I think they're going to break out, then I'll take a redraft shot with those same similar players. And then, if I do well, I'm going to do well in both of those leagues. And that's what I did. And it burnt me. So like I said before, you take a stand, and if you're right, you're right. And the saying on Off the Schneid, my saying is, if you're afraid to be wrong, you'll never be right. So it is what it is. If I was right, I would have been right. If I'm, scared and switching up, picking different guys because I'm nervous about injuries or something, it happens. What am I going to do? Right. So
Yep.
Yeah, that was a more recent example of a guy burning me, not because of their play. Injuries happen. It is what it is.
No, I totally understand 100%. You got to take a stand. You have to have a stance, or what else, your word means nothing in the community or to yourself. Yeah. If you don't have any, like my guys are T. Higgins and Hollywood Brown last year. Those were my 1000% guys. I was on this podcast saying Hollywood Brown will lead the league in targets.
You started good.
He was on pace. He was third before he got hurt. He was on pace, baby, 10 a game. And T. Higgins cost me a lot of championships, but understandably so. He cost me a lot. I only needed 2.6 T. That's all I needed.
Yeah, we'll get into that one. Obviously, that's going to be coming up here. We'll get into that, and obviously, you can tell I've gotten an opinion on that one. So yeah.
Let's get right into the best ball showdown. Like I have some players that when I wrote them down, when I was going through the list, I'm like, wait a minute, why is that guy lower? I'm always going to take. I'm always going to take the lower guy in this list. But when I did my research and I actually looked into it, I'm surprised. Like this first one, Garrett Wilson's going to wide receiver 9 on Underdog Fantasy right now, and Debo's going wide receiver 16. Now, both have quarterback questions up in the air. Both are super talented players. One has proven that he can be that guy, and one has proven that he's going to be that guy. So I'm going to leave it to you. Who are we taking at this ADP price?
Well, I agree with you there. I'm 100% on board with that discussion as far as price and ADP and value. I'm a hunter for bargains. I'm a hunter for value. I always want to find that value. And if there's someone that I think is going later than they should, I'm going to collect that value. And I agree with this with this sort of a setting in either redraft or best ball for sure. I agree. I'm going Deebo Samuel. As far as my exposure is concerned right now, I think I have 20 something, 24, 25, 26% Deebo Samuel. And I think I have like 5% Garrett Wilson. I think I only have 2 drafts of my 98 with Garrett Wilson. I would have been taking him a ton more, but I'm not, I just can't justify his price tag with the other guys that are around him. Like this person we're talking about right now, Deebo Samuel. And like you said, he's proven it. I think everybody just has obviously forgotten what he did 2 years ago. And it's not like he's 32 years old now where he's going to fall off a cliff. Yes, there's quarterback questions with the 49ers, but are you really concerned about quarterback play in Kyle Shanahan's offense? I'm not. I don't really care who's playing quarterback. I don't care if it's Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold, or Trey Lance. I really don't care. I think Deebo Samuel's going to get his, and he runs the ball. He had more rushing touchdowns 2 years ago than he did receiving touchdowns. So with that value, what I like to do is look at overall points. Look at the overall points that they're capable of putting up. Debo Samuel 2 years ago put up 300 fantasy points in a best ball format. Obviously, it may change, but whatever your league settings may be. But Debo Samuel had 300 fantasy points in a 16-game schedule, right? So he's shown that he has that ability to throw up 300 plus fantasy points. Garrett Wilson does not have that ceiling. I'm sorry to say it, but he doesn't. If you look at a guy like Stephon Diggs, that's a guy I think you can compare him to. I think he could have similar output to Stephon Diggs. Diggs had 260 points last year. The year before that, 230. I think Garrett Wilson kind of tops out at about 240, maybe 250, 260. In a perfect world, 260, right? So if we're not including injury in this conversation, which I never do, but before the league comes in or before the league starts, then yeah, I agree. I'm taking the bargain. I'm taking the value with Debo Samuel. What are your thoughts there?
So that was my thoughts initially. Like, okay, Debo's got the pop. Debo's going to have more opportunities. Debo runs the ball as well. But I looked at Garrett Wilson a little closer. He was targeted 146 times last year, which was good for a 6 in the NFL. Doesn't matter. Like when he played with Zach Wilson, god awful. We all know, right? 34 catches, 447 yards, no tutties, none. But when he played with Flacco and Mike White, like he produced 734 yards, 4 touchdowns. He was getting the targets. That tells me he can produce with a somewhat competent quarterback, and you throw in the possibility of an Aaron Rodgers possibly being there. It gives me the hopes that he can give you that big year that Aaron Rodgers he wants to prove. If he does go there, he wants to prove to everyone that he still got it. And Garrett Wilson was the one still there while they traded Elijah Moore, which tells me they're building this offense around Garrett Wilson, the receiver of the future. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of into this Garrett Wilson thing because I'm looking at Debo. I'm like, okay, 2021, I called it a fluke. I was like, there's no way. He's a great player, but there's no way he's going to duplicate what he did. 25% of his total fantasy value was on the ground, in the ground. 84.5 points of his total stat line was from rushing. So I'm like, there's no way. There's no way they're going to do it again. Mm-hmm. Last year, he had 24.5% of his fantasy output coming on the ground. So he does do it. It's consistent. It's just he didn't have the receiving yards and the touchdowns. The touchdowns were huge. He had 14 touchdowns in 2021. He has 12 touchdowns total his entire career outside of that 2021. Mm-hmm. That's pretty huge, man. So are we going to really count on these touchdowns to duplicate from that 2021 season? But at the same time, he still gets that rush. If my running back or my receiver is giving me 25% of production on the ground, I'm in. I'm all in.
It's free cheese, man.
It is. It really is. But I'm not going to count on the running game anymore and the running touchdowns with CMC there. I'm just not going to do it. The running touchdowns to me will heavily decline like we saw last year because of a CMC. I'm taking Garrett Wilson. But it's hard. But at that price, it's so hard because I'm looking. You have Jalen Waddle, who I would take over. You have Amon-Ra, I would take over. Devontae Smith, I think I would take over. And T. Higgins, I still love you, man. I think I would take him over as well.
Over Garrett Wilson, we're saying?
I think I would.
Oh, wow.
Look, I'm a huge T. Higgins mark. Like, even though he hurt me last year, I know it's not his fault. I'm a huge give me Joe Burrow and any quarterback or any receiver. I'm okay. I'm okay with that. Right now, I'm unsure if Aaron Rodgers is going to be in New York. I'm unsure who's throwing the ball to Garrett Wilson. That's my problem. Yeah,
no, you're fair there. And to be honest, for what you said there, I'm taking Garrett Wilson over those other guys for sure. And over this Waddle? Isn't, yeah, I am.
This is a Fins Talk Sports Network, buddy. We take Waddle number 1.
No, I see where you're coming from, but the bottom line is target share. Mm-hmm. Like Garrett Wilson doesn't have, like you just said, he doesn't have that competition for target share. He had 146 last year. No matter who's throwing the ball, that target share is going up. He's going to have 160, 180. I would see about 180 targets. If Aaron Rodgers is there, look at Devontae Adams. He had 200, pushing 200 targets with Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball, but he still only maxed out at 280 fantasy points roughly for Devontae Adams. So that's I'm looking at some parallels, and that's the way I'm thinking about it with Garrett Wilson. So yeah, I love Jalen Waddle. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love Jalen Waddle, but Tyreek Hill's there. But they run the ball a lot in that offense. There's just a lot of mouths to feed, and there's only one football. There's not very many mouths to feed in New York. even with Breece Hall there, who we'll get to in a second here, even with Breece Hall, I'm not concerned with Garrett Wilson not getting absolute minimum 150 targets. Mind you, I'm still saying that value. I'm taking Deebo Samuel over Garrett Wilson. Yes. But again, this isn't a Garrett Wilson or Deebo Samuel conversation. It's at value and at ADP. And in this case, yeah, it's still Deebo Samuel for me, but I am taking Garrett Wilson over those other guys, including Jalen Waddle. But I'd put Jalen Waddle head and shoulders above T. Higgins as well. And that's coming from this guy.
Yeah. I do too. Let me ask you this guy then, Chris Olave, who we assume will be the number one dominant target share holder over there in New Orleans. Are you taking Chris Olave with, his quarterback, his situation?
Not a chance. I'm taking Chris Olave at his price. Not even looking at him at his price. That's a big assumption to make that Chris Olave is going to out target a healthy, big caveat there, massive asterisk to that. We assume he's going to out target Mike Thomas, right? We just assume, but Michael Thomas is one of the best wide receivers in the game when he's healthy. He has been, and he even showed it last year when he was playing. It's tough for me to trust Michael Thomas. Don't get me wrong, but he did play a slight role in Derek Carr coming to the New Orleans Saints. And in that offense, I'm not going to just say that Chris Olave is going to lead that team in targets. Should he? Absolutely. He's the best wide receiver on that team, 100%. But with Michael Thomas there, I'm not just going to give him that crown. Chris Olave was my favorite wide receiver in the draft last year, but I am not touching him at his price. I'm not. So that's just where I'm at with that. And in this conversation, he's not even coming into my brain at that price.
For all you longtime listeners, we need to have a Michael Thomas drop. He comes up every show, no matter what, because again, huge mark. Look, 2019 was the year of Josh. I went undefeated in 2 leagues with Michael Thomas, Lamar Jackson, and CMC on both of my teams. Didn't lose a game. So I have a soft spot for Michael Thomas. Yeah. I love Michael Thomas. My co-host calls him a slant B word. I call him a slant God.
Yeah.
All right. The guy catches everything.
What's wrong with that? You say, is he saying that as a negative connotation?
Yes, he is.
That is not a negative. Like obviously there's money to be made being the best slant route runner in the NFL. And Derek Carr can hit that slant route all day. So I'm not just ready to crown Chris Olave the number one target leader on the New Orleans Saints with Michael Thomas there, who should hopefully finally be healthy this year. Hopefully he plays a full 17-game schedule. Even if he gets in, 15 games, he's still going to have a pretty healthy target share with Taysom Hill, with Kamara, maybe not, with Juwan Johnson, and then a couple other guys sprinkled in there, Shaheed, guys like that. So I just, at the price tag of Chris Olave, he is off my draft board.
All right. Fair enough. We'll move on to the next little batch of receivers here. We have personal favorite of mine, Hollywood Brown, going as wide receiver 33, or quarterbackless Michael Pittman at wide receiver 25. But they're both currently quarterbackless, as Kyler won't start the season. So that's why I put this on here. We don't know who's quarterbacking these guys for the first at least 4 games, I believe.
At least. Yeah, I think for me, this one's Michael Pittman Jr. all day. I'm a big fan of his as a player. The concern is obviously we don't know who's going to be throwing the ball there. And I've done a lot of mock drafts. I'm trying to build my mock draft for my final. I only do 1 mock draft, and I'm trying to build that right now. And I don't like their options at 4. I don't love Anthony Richardson. I love him as a talent and the potential that he may have, but he's not playing this year. He certainly should not play this year. Mm-hmm. Will Levis, I would not like that in Indianapolis at all. And that's your options, unless they want to try to trade down and get Hendon Hooker, but he's probably not playing next year either. So what do they do? They're in a really bad spot, in my opinion. The Colts are in a really, really, really poor quarterback spot, unless they can somehow manufacture a trade with the Texans. But I don't see that happening.
Okay, so I only own 2 professional football jerseys. One, Zach Thomas, my favorite player of all time, fins up. And my next one is a Gardner Minshew jersey from the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Nice.
I am in love with Gardner Minshew. He's in Indianapolis. He can be a quarterback. He can be a competent quarterback. He can get the ball down the field. We've seen it happen. I went ahead and looked at A.J. Brown's numbers with Minshew last game in 5 games. Now, hold on. Michael Pittman's not A.J. Brown, but A.J. Brown still did well. He had 28 catches, 545 yards, and 7 touchdowns in 5 games with Minshew. Minshew can do it. Minshew can just sling the ball.
You don't need to sell Gardner Minshew to me. I think he should have been rookie of the year that year over Kyler. He had more wins. He had kind of better numbers. It was similar, but he had more wins. He was more successful, and he was undrafted. He was like 6th round or something like that.
Yeah, very late. Yes.
Yeah, but he was my rookie of the year that year. So you don't need to sell me on Gardner Minshew. I absolutely believe he can get it done. So what I think that they have to do is draft Anthony Richardson and then play Gardner Minshew. That's where I'm at with the Colts. I really don't see any other option, in my opinion. All this talk about they have Will Levis ahead of Richardson, I think is a little bit of smoke and mirrors. That just doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I get that. Yeah. If you had to start an NFL game tomorrow, who would I take? I would take Will Levis over Anthony Richardson, but that's not what this is. Right. They're going to have time. Yes, they're going to have to, play Gardner Minshew, but like you said, he can get the job done, especially because he knows the offense. So I agree. And that's why that's another reason why I'm taking Michael Pittman, because to be honest, like I was saying, I've gone through the mock drafts and I don't see any other way, unless there's a crazy trade, that they don't have to start Gardner Minshew this year. And I'm comfortable with that. So that's where I'm at.
This was the easiest one for me when I looked into the numbers, but I'm like, gosh, Michael Pittman played 16 games last year, failed to reach 1,000 yards. That's really hard to do in 2022.
High target share too, with a lot of catches.
Yes.
So yeah, I agree. It was subpar, but that whole team fell apart. So
it was very hard to watch. Like, because my brother's a huge Colts fan, so every Sunday we're watching Red Zone, and he's just like, "Mother," I'm like, "Sam, y'all are tanking. You don't want to win these games, right, buddy?" Yeah. But I'm easily going Michael Pittman. That's a slam dunk. Honestly, when I did the question, I wish I picked someone else, because Hollywood Brown, without Kyler, I have no hopes for him. He might be. I love Hollywood. I think he's going to be something good. I think he's going to be a good wide receiver too his entire career, as in finish fantasy receiver 22, 23, 24. So he's being drafted a little under where I think he's going to finish. But Michael Pittman,
if he has a competent quarterback.
Yes.
Which is
very, I don't know when Kyler's coming back. That's the problem. He got hurt in week 14 against New England. So who knows if he'll ever make it. I don't know when he'll make it back.
Yeah. Plus, it's the way that he plays the position is a huge concern for me for him coming back, right? Mm-hmm. And this is another concern I have about Bryce Young, but that's another conversation for another day. But being the size, the stature that he is, he's never going to be a competent pocket quarterback. It's just not going to happen. It's tough for him to see over the line of scrimmage. It really is. And anyone that says it's not, and there's some caveats there. Yeah, Drew Brees, who's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and Russell Wilson, who has had struggles recently. So yeah, you can look at these outliers here, but how many guys that size have absolutely fallen flat on their face? The massive majority. The overwhelming majority of quarterbacks that stature have fallen flat on their face at the NFL level. So another story for another day about Bryce Young there. But, Kyler kind of falls into that same category, except he is a little stockier. He's a little stronger of a human being than a guy like Bryce Young. But question for you, where would we be sitting at, and how would this conversation go if a guy like Carson Wentz goes to the Arizona Cardinals? Because that's, I think, the only place he should go.
If a guy named Carson Wentz heads over to the Arizona Cardinals, I'm still taking Michael Pittman, but I love Hollywood Brown, so I think he'll do well.
You're a little more interested, right?
A little more interested, of course. I think that he can be that guy. I think he can be a good number 1 receiver on a team. But gosh, Carson Wentz, stop. We have to stop with Carson Wentz. There has to be other options out there. There has to be, right? There's not. Good.
Here's the thing. There's not. Okay. How many NFL teams are there?
32, of course.
How many quarterbacks in not fantasy, in real life football, how many quarterbacks would you feel absolutely comfortable with every single Sunday, week in, week out, no question? How many?
A handful, and they're all in the AFC.
Thank you. There's not enough quarterbacks in the NFL. There are not enough competent quarterbacks at the NFL level. There's just not. And Carson Wentz is, yes, he's completely average. I get that. But there's maybe less than average, but he's still better than a lot of even quarterbacks that played last year. I mean, I'm playing him over Taylor Heineke. The only reason they didn't is because I think they knew the writing was on the wall, and the team rallied around Heineke, so you might as well give him a shot. But there's obviously some things wrong with the Washington coaching staff there. I think they're going to, kind of decision their way out of a job after this year if they actually decide to start Sam Howell and just roll with that. In my opinion, they're gonna make a trade for Lamar Jackson after the draft. I think that's the big thing that might happen in Washington. That's what they should do, in my opinion. But I digress, and we'll see what they do. But I think Carson Wentz is relatively capable. He's competent enough, in my opinion, to play at the NFL level.
I can agree with that. He can play at the NFL level, but are these receivers going to benefit from it? If Hopkins does get traded, my problem is with Hollywood Brown. Can he be the alpha there? Because there's really no other options. I mean, not really. Greg Dortch. I mean, that's a very bad team.
It's a horrible team. I think the Arizona Cardinals are going to be the worst team in the NFL next year. They're really, really bad.
I hope not. I don't want them to get any awesome quarterbacks. Dang it.
They might have to make a decision about Kyler and Josh Rosen him.
I think they will make the decision. I don't think Kyler has met the expectations or met he hasn't done anything special in the NFL. Yeah, he's had flashes. Yes, he had that 1 year where he was MVP for half a season, but hey, Tua was MVP for half a season last year. Didn't really work out.
Yeah, I agree. If they're in a position to pick Caleb Williams, they're taking Caleb Williams 100 times out of 100.
I think the Buccaneers have something to say about that. I think they'll be in that strong situation for Caleb Williams starting Baker Mayfield.
I just think they have too good of a defense, the Bucs.
And they have such a terrible division. They might luck their way into coming second place in their division
or something. Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah.
All right. This next one is a very we talk about this guy every show. Justin Fields, going 32 overall on Underdog, right? Is that correct? Is that
about
a typo?
That, yeah. 34, 32, 34, something like that.
Okay, yeah, it's ridiculous. Deshaun Watson, quarterback 9, going 80.8 overall. I understand a lot of people don't like him for reasons, but he's still a fantasy football quarterback that needs to be talked about. I just need to know everyone knows where I lie on this. Everyone. I need to know where you lie.
I'm 100 times out of 100 at value. I'm taking Deshaun Watson without question. I was taking early on in the big board drafts, I was taking a lot of Justin Fields because I was getting him, 45th, 47th, 48th, around there. I'm comfortable with that. After Joe Burrow, I'm taking him after Joe Burrow 100 times out of 100. If Joe Burrow was ever on the board and I'm taking a quarterback, it was Joe Burrow over Justin Fields. Once that kind of swung the other way, because right now, and like you were saying, he's going before Joe Burrow, and that's madness to me. That's absolute madness. So once that pendulum swung that way, and his ADP creeped the way up to where it's at right now, he's off my board as well. I'm not, but at value, it's no question whatsoever. I'm taking Deshaun Watson. Absolutely. They have the best offensive line in football. They have a phenomenal running back. They have a good number 2, in my opinion, who can catch the ball. They have 2 good tight ends. They have now 3 good wide receivers, in my opinion, with Amari Cooper, the trade for Elijah Moore. And then don't sleep on Donovan Peoples-Jones. He was very, very, very quality last year, even obviously, especially in fantasy as well. He's very quality at price. He's another guy that I have, he was a stand. Obviously, I took less shares of Donovan Peoples-Jones after the trade for Elijah Moore, but I was heavily and still am heavily exposed to Donovan Peoples-Jones and stacking it up with Deshaun Watson. So yeah, I like Justin Fields. He can throw up fantasy points, but there's also the concern with him running around, injury. That's a huge concern. And Deshaun Watson, we've seen it. Yeah, you can think what you want to think about him as a human being, and we all have our opinions on that, but the bottom line is, we got to look at these guys as fantasy assets. Does it not make me a heartless piece of, what? Maybe, but I'm never going to be friends with Deshaun Watson, right? I'm never going to be friends with any of these guys. So it is what it is. That's how we got to look at these things. So that's where I stand on it. How about you? What are your thoughts
Yeah,
there? I know you're going to say the same thing, similar, but
very similar. I just wrote this. I'm not drafting any quarterback in the third round not named Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. I'm just not. Even Jalen Hurts, I'm skeptical. Not skeptical, but I'm just not taking him in the third round. I'm only comfortable with taking those two quarterbacks. I'm not taking anyone before that. What baffles me about Justin Fields is I was hardcore. I had Justin Fields over Trevor Lawrence coming out. I had Justin Fields as my quarterback one. I said, if I had 101, I'm taking Justin Fields.
wow.
I love Justin Fields. I have traded so much for Justin Fields. And so take this as love, Justin. I'm not drafting you because I don't believe in your throwing abilities. I know that you can throw, but I know that you won't throw. I know that you won't make the good decisions, and I know you'll just run for it and then you will get hurt. Unfortunately, I don't like to predict injuries. I hope he doesn't. Really don't. But you're telling me a guy who's been phenomenal his entire career and then was suspended, came back off of a year and a half layoff
Yeah,
and
about
played
that.
very bad. He was not good at all. And you expected him to go back to his MVP caliber levels? No, that's not going to happen. Now he's a full offseason with his team. The addition of Elijah Moore, that is a little bit. Look, we all have our past, right? Look at Tiger. When Tiger went down, he was Tiger. He was awful. He was completely awful, right? And then he overcame everything, and everyone started cheering for him again. I'm not saying people are going to do that with Watson, but I'm just saying let time heals all. He'll be back to normal.
Yeah, and like you were kind of saying there, he wasn't even allowed around the team. He was not allowed to practice. He was not allowed around the guys. None of that stuff up until what I think it was like 2 weeks before he came back or something like that is when he was able to be around the team. Besides the preseason, because he was around them in the preseason, but besides that, yeah, he wasn't allowed to be around anybody. You know, build rapport. You know, practice things like that. But like you said, full off season. You know, and yeah, again, like him or hate him, he's a talented human being at playing football.
And you match
That's
that
a
with the
fact.
talented receivers, Elijah. I'm excited for Elijah Moore. I'm excited for Amari Cooper. I have not been excited for Amari Cooper since Oakland. Seriously.
Yeah,
Like,
I've been habitually the biggest Amari Cooper hater. I don't know why. It's totally unwarranted. There's no really reason for it. I just have not been a big Amari Cooper supporter or fan or drafter or anything like that. But this year I'm on board because yeah, and especially if we're talking about best ball a little bit, when you're stacking teams at Deshaun Watson's value, I'm stacking the shit out of the Browns, to be honest with you. So how do you not with the ADPs that they're at? And the potential of that stack and that quarterback and that offense with Kevin Stefanski as well. So
I want to know. I haven't done any startup super flexes this year. No startup dynasties. I usually do one a year. First year I was tame, not doing them. So when someone told me early, this is a long time. It was back February, March, early March. So I have Justin Fields, and I'm like, yeah, I'll do this and this. He's like, what? Justin Fields is like going in the 6 overall in a startup. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. And then he showed me, I'm like, and he showed me multiple drafts. I'm like, people like early on, he was being drafted in Superflex dynasties over Joe Burrows, over all these guys. I'm like, what is happening? Like,
yeah,
what is going on? I
yeah.
couldn't, and Deshaun Watson was still down below. And this is, has something to do with this debate or this talk because Watson's got to be a first round pick. In my opinion.
People just hate him as a human being, which I understand. But, again, like these aren't your friends. This isn't, don't feel bad looking at these players like chess pieces. The owners of the franchises do. So don't worry about people's feelings. If I'm being like, it's pretty blunt and maybe I'm a terrible person for saying it, but it is what it is. Like you can't worry about people's feelings when we're trying to win leagues, win money. We're having fun here. So again, like they are chess pieces on a chessboard. And again, their own owners look at them that way. So let's move on. It is what it is. We can't make, there's no sense crying over spilled milk, right? Do I agree with him being in the league? No, I think he should have got suspended 2 years, 1 year for what he did and 1 year for the Browns for the contract they gave him. So just to punish them. That's what I think should have happened to Deshaun Watson, but he's, he didn't even get suspended a full season. So here we are.
I'm going to leave it at this. The same people that hate Deshaun Watson, seriously, hate him, are still cheering Tiger Woods to this day. So, and I don't know who did worse, who did this. It doesn't matter. Crime's a crime, and dirtbag's a dirtbag. And people will praise Tiger and trash people on Twitter for whatever. Anyway, Brees Hall is going running back 7. Dalvin Cook's going running back 15. Now, this one was interesting to me because of the same situation with other players. One has a long career of being phenomenal, awesome, and one will have a phenomenal, awesome career. So where are you putting your money at? Who are you drafting?
So this was a really interesting one. I really like this one a lot for a few reasons here. But so let's start with Dalvin Cook. With Dalvin Cook, yeah, he has been fantastic. He has been phenomenal. He's a very, very, very good running back in the NFL. I agree. But he may not be on this team next year. I think there's a very big possibility he either gets traded, potentially cut from this team. So that's a concern. Where's he going to go? What's his situation going to be like? I don't know. So that's an unknown. On the other side of it, Brees Hall tore his ACL last year. We all know, it's no secret, right? I have always avoided running backs. I've always avoided running backs the year after they tear their ACL. Every single time I avoid them. Dalvin Cook, I avoided, was on him 100% the next year. Saquon Barkley, I avoided, was on him 100% the next year. I'm going to do the exact same thing with Brees Hall. I have 0% exposure to Brees Hall, and that will not change. I'm not going to pick him. Same thing with Javonte Williams. He, in the league that you and I are in, I picked Javonte Williams over Austin Eckler. No one probably remembers that, but I did, because I very, very, very much believed in Javonte Williams. Obviously, I couldn't foresee what happened there, and he destroyed his knee. I will have 0 exposure to Javonte Williams. Same with Brees Hall. It's worse. His injury is worse than Brees Hall for sure. And I traded Javonte Williams after that because I think it's very possible he's never going to be the same running back ever again after that injury. I think Brees Hall can get back to where he can be and where people expect him to be, but I just have a hard time believing it's going to be next season, and I'm not going to be the guy holding the bag on Brees Hall. So I'm completely out. So in this scenario, I'm taking Dalvin Cook, even though there's some big unknowns there.
I 1,000% agree. I know he won't be on the Vikings coming up this season. My co-host Dirtbag Dave, who's not in today, he's a huge Vikings fan. Huge, like he's ride or die, and he knows Dalvin Cook is not going to be here next year. He's in all of I'm in every league with him, and he's been quietly acquiring Madison everywhere because he knows, which is a smart move to do.
Yeah, the biggest problem with Dalvin Cook is that right shoulder just can't stay in its socket.
Yes.
And it's always been an issue. You got surgery this year, and this is the time it's going to fix it. Okay, we'll see about that. But I do, and it's not a knock on Dalvin Cook. His numbers back it up. When he plays and when he's on the field, he scores touchdowns, and he's a quality running back. But I think the only reason he's still on that team right now is because he couldn't pass a physical. And he's probably still there right now. He probably can't pass a physical, so they can't trade him. They can cut him, but you might as well wait till post June 1, right, and save some money there. But those are the two things that I'm seeing with Dalvin Cook. That's my opinion on it. So
I just feel like the spot would need to be perfect for Dalvin, not to be successful, but for me to take him over Brees Hall. Mm-hmm. I am not staying away from Brees Hall. I'm not going out to get him. I'm not thinking like, okay, I need to get Brees Hall. But gosh, that price is a little too high, right? Running back 7? That's a little too high for me. So in this scenario, if we're talking player for player going into next year, I'm taking Brees Hall. But in this scenario, we're talking about ADP showdown, running back 7, no chance. Give me Dalvin Cook, even if he's on a team like the Miami Dolphins, which I think he will end up with Miami.
Yep.
That'd be the perfect position. And he's going to outperform the ADP by miles. Now, Brees Hall, it's going to be hard for him to outperform that ADP of running back 7. It's going to be very hard. There's a lot of competition ahead of him. You got the incoming Bijan Robinson, who's probably going to outscore him. You got CMC, you got Saquon, you got all these studs. How could you take him when Dalvin Cook, a known commodity, a known player who, top 6 in red zone carries last year, regular carries, yards, routes ran as a running back, like the guy is an overall stud, and it's hard to find that at the running back position, especially in this day and age.
Yeah, I'm taking Ramondre Stevenson over both these guys at running back 13, unless somehow the crazy rumors are true, which I have some serious doubts about, that the Patriots are going to draft Bijan Robinson. If they do, throw this take completely out the window, and it is what it is. But I highly doubt they do. I would be absolutely floored if they drafted Bijan Robinson personally. So as long as they don't, I'm taking Ramondre Stevenson over all these guys.
I do have a question with you for Bijan because I know you're plugged into that. Where do you think he ultimately lands? I think Dallas.
I think Dallas might trade up for him. Yeah, I think Dallas or Dallas or Philly might trade up for him. Realistically, I think those are the two best spots. So I did some looking. Actually, there's a few teams that he could fit in nicely, and these are for any running back. Any running back that goes to these teams, I'm going to be looking to draft them in rookie drafts and in best ball as well. So you got the Chargers. I'm going to take a look there, with Kellen Moore coming in and the issues with, Austin Eckler, all that sort of stuff. That's a landing spot I'm keeping an eye on. The Jags, that's a place I'm keeping an eye on because, Peterson has always liked to rotate running backs, and he's not a goal line guy. So if they get a big body back, which, Dalvin Cook is rumored potentially to the Jags as well. So that's a landing spot that I'm looking at. The Eagles, obviously, they were the first team to bring in Bijan, and that was their first visit. I could see them potentially trading up from the 30th pick. I don't see them drafting at 10. I think that'd be a little aggressive. But with their 30th, if they trade up, I could see that happening. The Cowboys are the second to last team. And the last team, the sneaky team that I think could very much, but they will not trade up because they never do, is this team right here. The Cincinnati Bengals are the best landing spot for a running back in this year's draft, in my opinion. Joe Mixon, I don't think is going to be on that team. I really, really don't think he's going to be on that team. So that's kind of the pecking order that I'm looking at. I would love if the Bengals get Bijan Robinson, but they'll never trade up for him. So unless he falls into their lap at 26, which I don't see happening, I think it's either the Cowboys or the Eagles.
I'm so down with the Cowboys because I want nothing more than Tony Pollard managers to cry. Not because I'm not a big fan of Tony Pollard. It's just because I'm hardcore 1000% Zeke. I love Zeke. Give me all the Zeke shares.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you.
And it's sad to see the demise of Zeke. It really is sad to see. Yeah. It's almost as sad as Eddie Lacy.
Well, I thought they would bring him back, but and he said he'd be down to restructure his contract and stay with the Cowboys, but they said we don't want to slap you in the face or something like that. Like that's a little ridiculous. Obviously, there might have been something more there. Maybe it's just time for a change for both teams. And Zeke could certainly end up on the Bengals, Ohio State guy, right? He can, and there's been talks, so he could be on the Bengals, but I just think with Joe Mixon's legal issues coming up here, you want to talk about guys that people don't like. We're talking about Deshaun Watson. Throw Joe Mixon on that list right behind Deshaun Watson.
Go back to episode 1 of this podcast about 4 years ago. I've been trashing Joe Mixon for doing what he did on Twitter. I'm the only guy. I feel like I'm the only guy.
Look at this surrounding you, and I've been trashing Joe Mixon since he's not that good of a running back at all. Everyone's he's an RB1, top 10 running back, top 5 running back. People were all over Joe Mixon. Never has been this guy. And I'm a massive Bengals fan because he's just not that good. He's really not. He's trying to hit a home run with every time he touches the ball. He doesn't take those 2, 3, 4 yards. He's trying to bust off a 50-yard run for a touchdown. That's a problem. Too much east-west. A lot of issues with Joe Mixon. And if we're talking about him as a person, he's right below Deshaun Watson. So there you go.
Yeah. Squeezing him in between Kareem Hunt, and then who's the other dirtbag? Tyreek. Sorry, Finstock Network. I think he's a dirtbag. They're all lumped in there, but we all still root for him still. Yeah. But hey, we are running a little late. I know you brought something. You wanted to bring one more scenario we could break down if you have time. Bobby, is that okay? Bobby? He's giving me a thumbs up. He's not, but
yeah, that's fine.
So the one I wanted to bring up because you've been talking about him a lot is T. Higgins. So let's talk about T. Higgins a little bit. The scenario I have, T. Higgins, wide receiver 13 currently, or Drake London, wide receiver 24.
Oh, boy. So obviously I told you I would take T. Higgins over someone earlier. I forget who it was already. I'm taking T. Higgins, and I'll tell you why. I do not believe they know what they're doing in Atlanta, period, point blank. I don't think I love London as a talent. I love him as a player, but are they going to throw the ball enough to make him viable? And are they going to also throw the ball enough to make Kyle Pitts viable? Because look, they have a lot of draft capital in both of them, and they both need to succeed. And can they both succeed in this offense? And when I mean succeed, as are they both going to get over the 120 target share or 120 targets? I don't think they both can. It's physically impossible for this team to do that.
But you can't attach them. You can't attach their success.
I know you can't. I know you can't attach them. But what I'm saying is, I feel like when it's time to throw the ball downfield, are they finally going to throw it to Pitts? Or are they going to throw it to London? I think they're going to throw it to London because their team is retarded. I don't understand why they took a tight end over a quarterback. I'll never look at my tweets on draft night. I laughed. I said they really took a tight end over Justin Fields. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm taking T. Higgins because of the volume, because of the better quarterback, because of the better offense, and because I feel like he will outscore Chase at least 7 times in a season. And I think he can be an alpha and can take over. Whereas London, I think he's a product of they're not going to throw the ball. There's not enough volume. And I think they're going to try to incorporate. They're going to force Pitts. They're going to force him.
I'm taking Drake London.
I know you are.
All day, every day. Even like again, look at those jerseys behind me. But the fact is that T. Higgins has a ceiling. The other on top of that, Jamar Chase has not reached his ceiling, not even really close. So with Tyler Boyd there, running backs, tight ends, all that, realistically, and if you're talking about volume, Drake London had more targets last year than T. Higgins.
So, how many games did Higgins miss?
I think 2.
Missed 2, and he quit on 2 because he almost killed a player. The game after Hamlin, he didn't even try.
No,
he just was out there trying.
Yep.
And no, he shouldn't. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if it was me, and I would take the rest of the year. I don't know how he performed, so kudos to him for even going out there. Yep. But I feel like those numbers are a little skewed because I don't think he really tried those games, and plus he was hurt. How many games did London miss?
Again, 2 maybe.
Okay, 2.
Something like that. But yeah, look at the year before. T. Higgins has had 110 targets 2 years in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's just there's a ceiling. There is a ceiling regardless for the wide receiver 2 in the Cincinnati Bengal offense. And T. Higgins is fantastic. He's a phenomenal player. He could go to any other team and be a wide receiver 1 on that team. Maybe he would be in fantasy. Maybe he wouldn't. We'd have to cross that bridge if we get there. But Drake London, I think, is that guy. I think, like you said, he's going to be that downfield target. And if you watch Desmond Ridder, who I'm a massive believer in, I'm a big believer in Desmond Ridder. If you watch him in college, throwing the same ball to arguably a very similar body in Alec Pierce, similar size, height, speed, all that sort of thing. I think I could see that happening quite a bit. And don't sleep on it. I think the Atlanta Falcons might draft Jackson Smith and Jigba at 8.
That adds another wrench that I don't even want to talk about. See, here's the thing: is I didn't know you were a big Ridder fan. I'm not. I'm not a Ridder guy, and I'm not a Falcons guy. I just don't like what they're doing with their franchise. I just can't. And it's maybe because last year they didn't care and they quit. I swear they were down 30 points. They're like, all right, Algier, here we go, buddy. Here we go. Take the ball again. It's like, what are we doing here? Like, what is the goal? Is the goal to go back to the 1800s and play football? Or is the goal to keep up with the Tom Brady's and the other players in your division? Not Tom Brady's not there anymore, but I feel like they're just a step behind and I don't trust anything they do.
So I disagree. That's a lot of people's takes on Arthur Smith. The biggest thing that the biggest problem with Arthur Smith is that he doesn't care about your fantasy team. He doesn't care about your fantasy production. And that's why everybody hates Arthur Smith, because he's trying to win football games. You know, being down 30 points, he knew what he had in his team, in my opinion. He knew what he had. And I think 7 wins was a win for that team. That's a big season. I don't think he expected to do that well, right? So 7 wins with the roster that he had. When you're down those points, Again, he doesn't care that you want Drake London to blow up. He doesn't care that you want Kyle Pitts to blow up, right? I think Arthur Smith is a very good real life NFL coach. And I think that we're going to see it this year if this all does, hinge on, is Desmond Ridder that guy? I think he can be. I think he will be. I'm betting that he will be. And I think that this team's going to be, I think they're going to contend for the division this year. I'm not saying they're going to win it, but I think they're going to definitely contend for that division this year. And I think some people might be singing a different tune about Arthur Smith after this year's over.
Hey, I'm here. Hey, we talked in the beginning of the show. We talked about making a stance. You got to stand tall, got to ride it to the end. So I totally respect that, man. Like that's a take that no one's talking about right now. And I can see a path if Ridder is halfway decent and they actually can throw the ball downfield to Drake London. I like him. So let me ask you this. You like him a lot. Chris Olave, you said you had him number 1 coming out.
No, he's my favorite. He was my favorite. I actually had Treylon
favorite?
Burks as my number 1, then Drake London, then Chris Olave.
Where was Garrett Wilson? I had him as my number 1 pick overall. I even told Gerson in the in our league, he was trying to get my pick. I had 104 or 105 or something like crazy. He's like, "Who are you taking? I want that pick." I said, "Dude, I'm taking Garrett Wilson. If Garrett Wilson is not there, you could have my pick because that's the only player I care about in this draft." And that was every league. I drafted Garrett Wilson everywhere because I was in love with that guy.
Is that before the draft or after?
That was before.
Okay.
Before.
My rankings were before the draft. Like obviously they would have changed knowing landing spot for sure. And maybe I was wrong on Treylon Burks there. The jury's still out. We'll see how he does this year. But Chris Olave was 3 for me. Drake London was 2. Okay. Wilson was 4. It was a good draft year for wide receivers last year.
It really was. All the Twitter blue check marks. They told us this. They're all trash. They're all slot guys. They were all this and that. They were all wrong because these guys were all great. And I think even for Burks, I think with the right situation, I think he can do well. Well, we are going to let you go, Cody. It's been awesome. Thanks for coming on. You can find him on Twitter at @off_the_schneid. I can't spell that out because I have you in a tiny box right now.
OFF_THESCHNEID off the Schneid.
And we are always presented by the Fins Talk Sports Network on Twitter. And you can follow me at Josh Kimmel OUS. And my last question, I'm going to start asking all my guests this because we are a Dolphins network. I need to know quickly your stance on our quarterback Tua. Are you in? Are you out?
I'm in. I think in that offense, he's going to be completely fine. We got a glimpse of it last year with those wide receivers with the speed they have. I think the offensive line is in a decent spot. They could use some help there. But with the head coach they have and the talent they have on offense, I'm in on him as long as he, figures out how to get the ball out of his hands a little quicker, even quicker than he has. And he can't be taking those hits. He's got to nip this in the bud because I'd like to see him have a good quality career. If they had gone with Justin Herbert, I think we'd be happier. As I think you'd be happier as a Fins fan. But I think he can definitely get the job done. I think they're a Super Bowl contender.
All right. Hey, listen, one more for the good guys, man. One more on the Tua bandwagon. That's what I like to see. Hey, Bobby, can you play our music?